What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Backmarkers F1Show podcast here on YouTube and wherever you're listening around the world. This is episode 138 here, and I'm glad to be joined by my fellow Backmarkers. It's been a while, but we finally got the gang back together. You, of course, know them, Shake Barty, Tyler McDonald, the rest of the Backmarkers F1Show podcast team. It's good to have you back, boys. I'm honored to be with you guys once again for another season. And how you boys doing? It's been a while.
It's been a while, Chris. No, it's good to be back together with the band and ready for another, hopefully, more exhilarating season that we saw last season. But everything's been good over here and excited to see you guys again.
Yeah, I mean, I can echo the same sentiments. It's been a while since we've done this, and I was a little bit nervous, but I'm, excited to see you guys again and do this podcast for this year. And, like you said, and hopefully not a straight Red Bull domination like last year, and we can have an interesting year to watch. So
that's what we hope for, and we're going to try and kind of break that down in this podcast. Of course, this is our season preview show, and I guess a little bit of our testing show as well, because it's the first podcast of the year for us, so maybe a couple of little hiccups here and there, but the teams had testing last week. We're going to do it a little bit here today as well. So it is, of course, the first race of the season is only a few days upon it by the time this podcast gets out there, so we're really right there at the business end of the start of the season. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about some of the preseason news that we missed while we were away. We're going to talk about some impressions about preseason testing, and then, of course, our predictions of the season, including our top 10 constructor standings and drivers' champion as well. So, Tyler, I'm going to start with you. This preseason of Formula One has been probably the most wild preseason of any that I can remember. So I'm just going to ask you simply, what really kind of stood out to you, and what was your main storyline and headline during Formula One preseason in 2024?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think it has to do with anything on track, which is kind of disappointing. I mean, it's almost like the Netflix season 7 of Drive to Survive started in preseason testing with all the drama that's been going on off the track. And I think that's really dominated the headlines of not the driver changes coming this season, but the driver changes next season that we will see in Lewis Hamilton going over to Ferrari, and the repercussions that will take place around the rest of the drivers grid for the 2025 season. So unfortunately, that's been the dominating headlines, in my opinion, and not exactly where you'd like to see the season start for on-track drama, that you could say.
yeah, I kind of have to say the same thing. It's been interesting to see all the drama that's been unfolding, especially I think right as of today, they're about to announce Christian Horner's what's going to happen with his case. What is Monday today? So I think they said Tuesday or Wednesday they're going to do it. So even with all the stuff happening in 2025, and even what happened with testing with Checo as well as Charles. So yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to see some actual racing and some real data that they could have gotten out of the testing. So
yeah, those are just some of the things that happened. And yeah, I think clearly the Hamilton to Ferrari was the biggest one. But a lot of the other things get swept under the rug, which was, if you guys remember the day before that, it was Andretti and that bid getting basically canceled out by Formula One management. And I mean, that's personally my conspiracy theory, that the Hamilton Ferrari news was purposely leaked by somebody who had knowledge of the situation, because the press that was coming from that Andretti announcement was like 100% bad towards Formula One, versus like nobody that was kind of the other way around. So the press on social media was so bad. And the next day, out of nowhere, I remember waking up in the morning and just out of nowhere seeing the rumors of Hamilton to Ferrari, Hamilton to Ferrari. And we've seen it before, right? It happens usually almost every year. And then all of a sudden, all these really credible publications started to publish this in news. But it really only came in the evening when the teams officially confirmed it, and you could just tell that they weren't ready for it. So that's my opinion anyways, that the news was leaked. And then we had that, and then really at the beginning of the year, which was Gunther Steiner losing his job at Haas, and then, of course, Akamatsu being the new team principal at Haas, which now in the grand scheme of things was almost like nothing news compared to all the other stuff that happened.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well, and it's too bad. I really want Andretti to be part of Formula One in 2025 or 2026, sorry, it would be, um, which would be fantastic for the sport and getting not only another American team and the amount they're pushing the USA, you think it would make more sense, but as well as getting another power or engine supplier in Formula One as well, which would shake up the grid a little bit there too. So yeah, those are some other great things that you mentioned, Chris. I mean, like, there's been so much that has been happening, all these little things that have been overshadowed by a couple big announcements on the other end. So it's yeah, who knows where when we're not even the season hasn't even started and we got so much drama.
Yeah, all of this will take up probably 2 episodes in Drive to Survive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally forgot about Gunther Steiner as well. The conspiracy theory I'm on is that Andretti is going to buy into Haas somehow, and that will be the American manufacturer with the American engine running it together or whatever.
And it's certainly a possibility, especially when you look at the trajectory of Haas in the last few seasons, possibly even this season, which we'll get to in our predictions. So at the moment, I've heard that it's not going to happen, but it's a possibility. And also just to note that Formula One did say that they said no to Andretti for 2025-26 entry, but they're going to keep kind of the door open for them in maybe 2028. So I think the Andretti saga is not over yet, but I do believe that, as all of us believe on this podcast, they definitely should be the 11th team on the grid, and there's no reason for them not to be. So I think it was quite the embarrassment for Formula One with the way that they handled that statement as well, as to why they rejected the bid. So unfortunate, but there's plenty more of that to come. And just to your point there, Shake, what you mentioned earlier with the Christian Horner news, like I said, this podcast is going out on Wednesday, so maybe by the time you guys are listening to this, you've already heard of the decision, whether he's going to stay with the team, whether he's not. My personal opinion on the whole thing is that this whole thing has just been a disaster in terms of how it's been handled by media. I think it's really been a trial by media for Christian Horner, and by no means a fan of Christian Horner, but we have heard so many different rumors and nonsense about what he did or what he didn't do. Like, we have absolutely no idea what is happening here. And so I'm just going to wait and see to what this report is. Apparently, it's an over 100-page investigation that they did, and something is going to be coming in the next few days before the first race. Of course, he was front and center for the launch, and he was at testing as well too. So it's been really interesting to see how this whole thing played out to start the season.
Yeah, and it is an interesting way because, like you said, trial by media, and we don't really know anything that has happened on the inside other than speculations and reports of what could have possibly happened back behind the scenes. And it's I don't want to speak too much of it because we don't really know any of the answers. So it'd be really interesting when that report does come out and the pros go into that 100-page document, because I certainly won't be going into that 100-page document and reading everything that may have happened. So it's gonna be really interesting to see what will happen with Christian Horner in the future there. And if he does end up stepping down or leaving, what will be the replacement? Will that change the dynamic at all at Red Bull Racing and create some drama off the track that impacts their on-track performance? I mean, won't spoil anything, but by going from what testing has been saying, maybe not. But you never know how that off-track drama will affect the on-track performance of the team.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the 100-page document hasn't come out yet, but I have a feeling if Red Bull really wanted to do something about it, they would have fired Christian Horner already if they were going to do that. It seems weird that they would wait till the document is coming out if it's like a very big deal. It seems like they're kind of just rallying behind Christian Horner to be there. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I don't want to say too much about it because we don't know too much, but those are just my initial thoughts.
No, it's a good point you bring up, because just to quickly maybe wrap this story, it's because, again, the allegations have been coming from all the different angles. First, it was allegation of some sort of aggressive management behavior. Then we heard rumors and allegations that it was like he was sending dick pics, some sexual pictures to female employees, We don't even know if it was a female employee. This is just what's being rumored in some media outlets. But I also thought about that too. I said, apparently there's rumors of text messages or evidence, but I was saying the people inside Red Bull, they obviously know what he did or didn't do. And so if what he did was really that serious, especially in today's world of where we live in, I don't think that he would have been around still to this day. I think he would have been kicked out right away because we've seen this happen before with other companies. All it takes is just a simple allegation and the person is dismissed. So I wouldn't be surprised if this all ends up being nothing at the end of the day, which is maybe why Red Bull allowed him to be at the lunch and to be also at testing. So maybe it's going to be nothing at the end of the day.
Yeah, you just never know. Cases like these kind of have to wait for the final report to come out before you make any speculation, because you don't want to be caught saying a wrong comment or speculating the wrong thing with all these rumors flying around for all these different allegations that could have happened. So I think it's important for everyone to wait for the report to come out and just see what actually comes of this before we draw the conclusions of the state of Red Bull.
Yeah, and like you said, and you guys both said it, we don't really know what the situation is, so we can't assume what Red Bull's intentions are or what Christian Horner's intentions are at the end of the day about the team itself. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens in 24 to 48 hours, so probably less than that.
Well said, and I think that's more respect than what most professional media outlets have done so far in this situation, because even some really big broadcast networks have had to issue apologies for false statements that they put out. So yeah, that's that's more to be said on that topic for a different day. But let's move on then to winter testing. We just wrapped up only a few days ago. Only 3 days of testing, 24 hours of running cumulative on the Bahrain International Circuit. And it was a really interesting test from the standpoint of all the teams had really solid running. I mean, we didn't, let's say, have a record on laps completed, but all the teams really got through their programs, collected a good amount of data. Only a few mechanical issues here and there, but nothing catastrophic. Really biggest technical issues were of the circuit itself. I mean, other than that, the teams were fairly bulletproof. But this was probably one of the most difficult preseason things to read because we didn't get a lot of performance runs. And at the same time, even the data we have on the long runs is difficult to analyze because teams were running different fuel amounts, engine modes, things like that. I think all these teams were really trying to, at some level, hide their performance and their potential. So, Tyler, I'll start with you again. As you're watching the action and reading some of the things online, what stood out to you while you were watching testing last week?
Yeah, I think he made a good point in saying that, I mean, most of the issues were with the track. I think it was a great winter testing for Bahrain International Circuit for them to figure out all their manhole covers that were coming off the track. So unfortunately, that damaged a few cars during preseason testing, and hopefully it's all figured out for this weekend's upcoming race. But I mean, my biggest thing, I got a few texts from friends about this saying, "Oh, is it going to be another year of Max just dominating with the performance that we saw out of the Red Bull in winter testing?" And like you said, we don't know exactly. We've seen enough winter testing through our days of doing this podcast that you just never quite know with winter testing what the actual true potentials are. But all the cards are kind of leading. It's like almost having the Red Bull having a royal flush on the table and just needing that ace of spades to complete the royal flush. So
You're muted.
Shaker, you're muted.
Do this all the time. No, I mean, I kind of agree. We don't really know what's going to happen. It seems more like the manufacturers are just kind of copying a lot of the cars from last year to see what their testing is going to be like. And I mean, even with Red Bull, like you said, they have an interesting new cover, but is that really what they're going to end up sticking with when the first race comes around, or when the other teams decide to do with the other teams decide to change up the design slightly based on what their testing results are as well? Because I mean, right now it looks like Haas has the best engine, well, the longevity. Oh my god, the engine that's going to last the longest. And we know overall, that doesn't mean anything. But last year we had a few races that went till the very end. So I mean, we don't really know what's going to happen yet, and especially, I feel like Red Bull are sandbagging their car a lot, especially with, and same thing with Ferrari and Red Bull, Ferrari and Mercedes.
And I mean, this is the thing is that we don't really know until at least pre-practice two, and then obviously qualifying and the race itself what the result is going to be. And so this preseason testing was more just about these teams' kind of reliability going through all their programs and things like that. But what is nice to see about this season far is that all teams seem to have improved the cars. I mean, you're seeing obviously third year of these new regulations, kind of the convergence of design of a lot of these teams going toward the similar RB19 style concept. And then it's hilarious that Red Bull just comes out and just says, okay, like we're just going to totally change the game now and continue to move the goalposts forward. Because I think at the end of last year, we all thought, okay, you know, McLaren are getting a little bit closer. Ferrari are maybe starting to get their things together a little bit. We might see a little bit closer now, but the problem is everybody chasing the RB19, but the RB19 isn't racing this season. It's now the RB20, and it's a totally different car. So yeah, as we're getting into our predictions, we'll see where we think the cars are going to be. But I think just for me, one thing that really stood out to me, other than let's say the top of the field, was just how bad Alpine is this season, and how bad I think they will be in 2024. And I mean, Renault to me has been kind of an ongoing joke in Formula One. Their 100 race plan is going to shit, frankly, because it's really more 100 race plan. They said 100 race plan to, I think, what, win a world championship or something like that. And it's more 100 race plan at the back of the grid because they came out and last year they finished fifth in the constructors, if I'm getting that correct, fifth or sixth. And somehow they managed to make a car even worse than that in this season. And all the engineers, all the kind of chatter in the pit lane is saying that the car is awful in all areas. So I mean, it makes me laugh. I feel bad for the drivers. I feel bad for if there's any fans out there of the team because it's just the most inconsistently. No, the most consistent inconsistent team in F1, Alpine, does it again.
No, yeah, you're 100% correct, Chris. I mean, the fact that they have no paint on their car in the first place and are still overweight, and apparently, you know, it's undrivable. Like slow down the straights, not balanced correctly. I mean, from a few reports I've seen online, is they're going to take the first 5 races just to figure out what's wrong with the car. Like, oh my goodness! I mean, that's just crazy. At that point, do you just scrap this year's car and just put out last year's car and say, "Hey, have fun"? It's
Almost.
yeah, almost. I mean, it's a disaster territory for Alpine, which is too bad because I mean, you have a French team with 2 French drivers, and it's such a fantastic story for French racing in general. And you don't want to see it end on such a sour note. And there's rumors of top engineers that are going to be stepping down from the team, and that's not going to be any help because then who's going to be the engineers and mechanics and technical guys who will fix the car? So really, really a mess for Alpine. I'm interested to see how bad the car is in Bahrain in race number 1. I mean, are we talking about what we saw back in 2014 with Marussia and Caterham kind of territory with how slow those cars are? I mean, there's no paint on that car in the first place, Chris. And I mean, Shaker, I don't know what you think about this Alpine team, but I'm really
I think they should follow Racing Point and Aston Martin, you know, that kind of thing, and rebrand back to Renault, and maybe they'll have better luck. Is what I think. Because this Alpine legacy that they've tried for the last 2 years has been just terrible. This is the first year they have the same driver lineup, and like you said, the car is worse than last year. So I don't know what they're doing. Clearly not a lot. Because I just, how do you make something worse in the, like, this is what, last year of these regulations? So I thought Haas had a bad last year, but you know, I think they just proved that you could be worse. That's pretty harsh,
Yeah.
but I mean, it is
Well, you have
unfortunately
to
the
be.
truth.
Exactly. And they're a huge manufacturer, and they're a team that has won world championships, have won many races. And to see how bad that they've become, like, okay, like you look at a team like Haas, I mean, they are a small team, they're a new team. We can kind of understand their struggles. Williams, they went through a lot of their financial issues, but with even these teams that are struggling, you notice a trend of positivity. Williams are starting to slowly come back. McLaren, the last 7 years, have started to really climb back up the top, and they've won a race, and they're scoring podiums season in, season out. They're finishing top four, even maybe top three in the world championship. But with Alpine, it's just they're literally like going nowhere. They're always in like a fifth or sixth. 2022, they were lucky they finished in fourth, but you get no sense from the team that okay, this is the team knocking on the door, the big three in Formula One. And I just find it hilarious that I'm pretty sure Oscar Piastri and Fernando Alonso at the end of last season were probably laughing their asses off, going, "Man, how smart were we with the decision that we made?" With Alonso as many successes he had with Aston Martin, and of course Piastri having one of the best rookie campaigns in recent memory. So, I'm sorry to all the Alpine fans out there. We have been shitting on your team in the last 10 minutes, but I think even they will agree that it's just like, what is going on with this team, man?
Yeah, it's hopefully not as big as of a disaster as everyone thinks it's going to be. But I mean, man, I always I want to go back to Shaker's point of rebranding to Renault. I mean, I know like they were trying to rebrand to Alpine to help sell their luxury sports cars, the Alpine brand underneath the Renault brand. But when you think of it, the average Joe is going to buy a Renault over an Alpine, just due to how much they make. So, um, in my opinion, it'd be smarter to go back to the Renault branding, and maybe you do that, and everyone will want a Renault if they do well.
I mean, Red Bull did it. I mean, Red Bull really. I know they didn't have an option with AlphaTauri because they were broke, but I mean, AlphaTauri, who has completely rebranded back to RB, basically back to what they were before, Toro Rosso, what they were before, uh, is still doing better than them. And I know they're just still technically, Red Bull's B team, but how does a B team perform better than what your main focus is as a team? You know, so it's weird.
Very weird. And totally, I agree with your point. It's funny you brought that up because it's like in my life, I have never seen an Alpine anywhere.
Yeah.
Certainly not on
Yeah.
the road, but even in any like car show for that matter. I mean, I didn't watch as many like Top Gear episodes you guys did, but I don't ever remember them talking about an Alpine or seeing it on a feature or a story, anything like that. And
I
I mean, even here in Europe, in Serbia, there's
yeah.
plenty of Renaults. Like it's a very popular car here. Obviously, way more than in North America. No Alpines though. You're not gonna
But
find an Alpine even in Europe.
yeah, I recently just rewatched the Grand Tour Carnage 2 episode, and they did an entire. I'm sure you were about to raise the
Yeah,
same
that's
point too.
exactly it.
They did an entire episode on French cars, and they basically were like, French cars aren't really made to perform. They're made to basically like take a beating and just do whatever you want. They're like
That's
cheap
right.
cars, so like you can destroy them. And like Alpine wasn't even featured on that entire episode. So I mean, like it's like things like Renault and Peugeot and cars like that are like really popular in France, and not Alpine either, because like I mean the president or prime minister president doesn't even have like a luxurious car in France. So
Everyone knows your first car, well, at least in Europe, and maybe in England too. Renault Clio. That's the everyone's first car. So just go back to the Renault Clios.
Yeah, they're gonna have to do something, but yeah. So that wraps up our Alpine talk. They're gonna make just one more appearance in our in our predictions for the season. So, and just before we get to our predictions, I almost forgot, but you guys brought it up there in the last few minutes, which was the rebranding of two other teams this year, and was let's say quite a maybe shocking is an aggressive word, but the rebrand certainly stood out. And the first one we'll start with is Sauber, because I'm going
yeah,
to continue to call it Sauber even throughout the season and on this podcast, just so everybody knows. But they rebranded. Oh man, I don't know what the official name is, but I believe it's uh, Steak F1 Team Kick Sauber, something like that,
But
or
I
Kick Sauber, or
I thought they weren't. I thought there was a whole discussion of them not being allowed to have stake in their name because of like the Switzerland laws or whatever of them not being able to gamble. Is that still a thing or no?
yeah. So it is that in certain countries that they go to, I believe they won't be able to use. I think it's the stake. Stake is the betting one,
Yes,
right?
stake is the betting one. Yeah.
Strikes
Yeah.
betting
So I think
firm.
certain countries, I'm not sure which one, maybe the Middle Eastern ones, I'm not exactly sure. But in certain countries, they won't be allowed to use that branding. So I guess then they turn to Kick Sauber.
Yeah, the official name, I just had to go on their Instagram to make sure, is Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber, which is a mouthful for sure. And I wore my bright green to be on Team Sauber. It's a Rio Ave for Portuguese soccer. But I'm not sure what is brighter, if it's Sauber's new livery or if it's Valtteri Bottas's hair. Did a great job in dyeing that bleach blonde. That's gonna be a ridiculous combo to see Valtteri Bottas and his bleach blonde mullet with his bright green fire suit on. So, yeah, really interesting rebrand. And I mean, is it? It's just a 1 year rebrand, is it not?
Well, basically until 2026.
Yeah. So 2 years, I guess. And yeah, I mean, almost. I guess it's close, isn't it? This.
That their team like polo stuff like that is, I mean, it's out there, but yeah, I mean, it's like an okay livery. I think the positive is that it stands that it's going to be the easiest car to identify. But
Yep.
yeah, it was very kind of a weird rebrand, and it's going to be awkward kind of 2 years for Sauber as they transition to the Audis, and even the Audi project is a little sketchy at times. Even recently, Audi lost one of their big bosses. He exits, and there's fresh concerns over the Audi F1 project, but we'll stick with Stake for now. And yeah, so it was one of the major rebrands, and we're going to be calling them Stout for the most part, so there's no confusion. But I think there's even more confusion with the other team that rebranded, formerly Altauri, formerly Torosso, formerly Nardi. They became RB, and we thought that it was going to be called the Racing Bulls, but they're going mostly by RB, although they say RB stands for Racing Bulls. And to make it even more complicated, they're calling their car VCarb. VCarb 01, that is the acronym. So RB, VCarb. What do you guys think of the whole rebrand? I think the only positive thing is that the livery to me looks fantastic.
Yeah, official name Visa Cash App RBF1 team. But
Totally thought about the Visa, yeah.
yeah, Visa Cash App, yeah. But yes, the livery looks fantastic, and it's nice, like, going back to those Toro Rosso colors. Chris, I'm not sure if you saw the meme, but um, after RB used some Floviz paint, we had some lime green Floviz paint, and it looked like the Sauber car and the RB car had a kid, and I think it was being named the Visa Cash App Stake RB Sauber Kick F1 team or something like that. Is I don't know.
I'm gonna name my kid that.
Yeah, it was all over the place, but I do like the rebrand brand. Other than the name, obviously, the money does help. AlphaTauri was struggling for a little bit for money, so Visa Cash App clearly put in a lot of money to have them as the presenting sponsor of the name for RB's team. However, in general, I do really like the livery. I think it's clean looking.
Um, and it stands out too. Like the color combination with the blue, red, and the white works really well. All the sponsors were they're displayed really well. Because I mean they don't have a lot of sponsors either compared to some of the bigger brands like Mercedes and Red Bull, where they just have just labeled all over their car. So I think it looks really good. And then on stake F1 team or whatever they're going to be called. If Porsche or Audi do decide to enter F1 and they decide to go with that team, I think the color scheme that they picked out really kind of works for Porsche, because they have their mean, they brand with their lime green Porsche 911 all the time, so I think it works with that. But other than that, I think yeah, RB probably has the best livery. And I do like Mercedes going back to the gray this year as well, to be a little bit different than all the black cars that they're already out there. So,
Sorry, just going back to had to look it up. It's not a Jordan I'm thinking of. It's the retro Williams, old school looking Williams
yeah,
that I'm thinking of. Hold on, can you see that?
Oh, yeah, we got it. Okay, hold on.
Nice.
Let me add this. Oh, nice. There we go. Aha, yes. I see what you mean.
no, it looks pretty sick actually.
Yeah, I feel like there's a little bit. It even has the Red Bull helmet. I'm not sure who's driving that car.
Probably
But
DC.
I'm not sure if you can edit in like a side by side, Chris. But I don't know. I think there's a little bit of comparison there, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Maybe it's just the colors, but that's kind of the retro look vibe I get.
Yeah, I mean, especially whatever this picture that you have on the left side too, with those color on the side profile. I
Oh,
know.
that's someone's concept. So
Yeah. It looks good. I know it looks very similar to it. I agree.
Yeah, that's a great looking car too.
it is a great looking car.
I mean, all cars from that generation look so good.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I wish we could go back to those. Not just the colors, but also the cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we've reached the point in the podcast now where we get down to the business end, which you guys have probably been interested about, and what's always usually the most exciting part about any preseason preview podcast, which is getting into our season predictions. So we're going to run through our top 10 constructor standings positions and also our Drivers' World Champion. But let's start first with who we think is going to be the Constructors' Champions, and then go with the Drivers' Champion, because if we pick a Drivers' Champion, we can kind of infer what the constructors is going to look like. So I'll go first, I guess. I'll kick it off here on my end, and I'll let you guys give your thoughts, and maybe I'll do a little bit explaining myself. So I'm just going to turn a little bit to the side here to my other monitor. So my top three, or starting with that, I got Red Bull as your 2024 Constructors Champions. Then I've got Ferrari in P2. I've got McLaren in P3. Then finishing in fourth, I've got Mercedes, followed by Aston Martin in fifth. Then I have RB in sixth, Racing Bulls in sixth. Then I've got Williams in seventh, Alpine in eighth, and finishing off, I got Sauber finishing in ninth, and then the last team, Haas, in number 10, which of course there has to be a last team. I'll give maybe just some quick explanations. Obviously, I still think Red Bull is the team to beat. They've set a totally new benchmark with this RB20. So I believe that they will probably be very difficult to beat this season. Now, is domination going to be as bad as it was in 2023? I'm not sure. I hope not. But this whole RB20 gives the possibility that it might be as bad or potentially even worse than last season. And so I think that McLaren have made a step forward. I think they will be able to beat Mercedes this season. It will be very close, in my opinion. But I think that they're going to be fighting out for that last top three spot there. Aston Martin is still a big unknown for me. I'd like to believe that they could be fighting in that top three spot again, but I'm not exactly sure. The way that they kind of fell off last season with the development doesn't give me the most confidence in them. I'm hoping that Alonso can kind of carry that team and maybe finishing in the top three, but I put them in the fifth spot because I just think that battling with teams like Mercedes, Ferrari that have still better resources, but although they do have the new factory, as well as McLaren too, they got the new wind tunnel going and things like that, so I think they're on an up and up at least. And then further down the field, obviously Alpine that we shit on a bit in the previous part of this show. I think they're going to finish well outside the top five, and the improvements that RB have brought with this new concept should give them a much more successful season than in 2023. And all in all, I mean, when I look, I put Haas as the worst team so far, more or less just because I think there also has to be a team that finishes last, and I think Haas is most likely to be there. But some good positive things came out of them from testing. They completed the most laps. They said that they've solved some of the issues from last season. So maybe Haas will surprise us. Maybe they won't be as bad as they think. And a lot of the kind of, not rumors, but let's say the news coming out of the team is that it's a little bit of a different culture now that Gunter Steiner's gone under leadership. They have a little bit more of a different direction they're going, and it seems positive for them, which is actually nice to see. So that is my top 10 constructor standings. And then, of course, I think you guys can guess my 2024 driver champion will be Max Verstappen, because I think he's operating at a supreme level right now. He's going to be incredibly difficult to beat. Even if it was close, I still think that he'd be the Drivers' World Champion. But the car in his hands, he says that the drivability is even better than the RB19 was. Smiled on his face that during testing, even the few laps he completed, he didn't even drive as much as some of the other drivers. I mean, his feeling with this car is just going to be on another level, in my opinion. So I think Max Verstappen, 2024 Drivers' World Champion, he will smash the competition for his 4th World Championship. So that's my my prediction. So let's go, Shaker. You can go up next for your top and drivers.
Yeah, I have for my constructors, I have Red Bull as number 1, Mercedes as number 2, Ferrari as number 3, McLaren as number 4. I have Aston Martin as number 5. I have a little bit more faith in Aston Martin than you do, Chris. RB as number 6, and Williams as number 7. Alpine as number 8, Sauber as number 9, and Haas as number 10. So my last two are pretty much the same as yours, and I think my number 1 is the same as yours. Other than that, I think between 1 to 8, 2 to 8 is all a little bit different. What did you have Alpine as number 8 as well?
Yep, I had them as the 8. My last, I had 8 Alpine, 9 Sauber, 10 Haas.
What did you have number 7? Williams or RB?
Williams.
Okay, yeah. So ours is pretty similar then, except for ours is pretty similar except for I guess Mercedes and Ferrari switched around. Got Mercedes at number 2, but yeah. I think Mercedes will get their stuff together a little bit more, and Lewis Hamilton as his last year as Mercedes overall. He's been there for, I mean, if you include his time at McLaren as well, like what, 16, 17 years? Probably a little bit more than that, actually. 17 years? 16, 17 years? I think it's going to be last year at Mercedes, so we'll see how he does. And then for Drivers' Championship, I also have Max Verstappen, and then I have Lewis coming in second, and then Checo as third. I think it's going to be pretty close with second and third, but that's who I have.
Nice. All right, Tyler, you're on deck.
Very interesting. Well, for fun, I also created a top 10 driver standings as well, along with
I did as well, but I wasn't sure if we were going to read it out. So I have a driver standing as well, but
okay.
Yeah.
I didn't, so I was slacking off.
So I'll start with constructors then, and then I'll move to my drivers. But I also have Red Bull as number 1, and I think if you don't have them as number 1, you're kind of thinking a little bit sillier out of the box. It's hard to go against Red Bull with the form that they're on right now, and even the comments in the preseason with how Max has enjoyed driving this RB20. I think you have to put them as heavy favorites to win the constructors this season. Number 2, I have Ferrari, followed by number 3 in Mercedes. So a little bit different from you guys. Number 4, I have Aston Martin. I think they have the capabilities there. They have a lot of top engineers that they've kind of grabbed from big named teams that I think will help with the development. And even though we saw that kind of lack in form last year, at the end of last year, we saw them pick it up at the last little bit of the season. So I thought there was some positive momentum going toward Aston at the end of the last 2-3 races of the season. In 5th, I have McLaren, and I see them just taking a little bit of a down tour here. I mean, the momentum was so high going forward for McLaren at the end of last season that I think that maybe a little too much time was focused on the 2023 car and not the 2024 car. So I think take a little bit of a hit, not too much. They still finish in the top 5. I have RB as 6th, Williams as 7th. So I think same for you guys for that one. A little bit change. At 8th, I have Haas, actually. And this was a last-second change. I had them in 9th, but I thought, you know what? I like the driver's lineup better at Haas. And I just find there's a little bit more maturity and veteran leadership there on the driver's side that I think will help further the development of the team. 9, I have Sauber, and in 10th, that leaves Alpine. I think they're really going to have a tough one to start the season. And I lost all hope kind of when they said the first 5 races of the season are going to be just to figure out what's wrong with the car. And I guess I'll lead into my drivers' championship. And obviously, I have Max Verstappen winning the drivers' championship as well. Same thing. I think you're silly if you bet against Max Verstappen right now. I think it has to be the clear favorite. I guess we'll get into the rest of them then, or you want me to go read
Yeah, if you want, you
my
could
top
list them
10?
off, and then read out your top 10, and then we can all kind of bounce off some comments off of each other's lists.
All right. So I have Verstappen, P1, winning the championship. In second place, I have Charles Leclerc in second place. Sergio Perez in third. Lewis Hamilton in fourth. George Russell in fifth. Carlos Sainz in sixth. Lance Stroll in seventh. Fernando Alonso in eighth. Lando Norris in ninth. Daniel Ricciardo 10th is my driver standings.
Top 10.
It's a top 10 for sure. And I want to explain maybe a little bit. Carlos Sainz I have in 6, and I just think with all the focus being on Leclerc this season and Hamilton coming in next season, I really think, unfortunately for Carlos Sainz, that he's going to be at the bottom of all strategy decisions. He's not going to get the top upgrades first. It's going to go to Leclerc. I think that's really going to be a detriment to Carlos Sainz this season, unfortunately for him, because Ferrari just doesn't have really any future with him starting next season. So I think that's going to be a personal hit for him. And we know how Ferrari like to kind of mess with their strategies and favor one driver over the other. And that's going to be a clear favorite, I think, this year as well. Lance Stroll showed a lot of good pace in testing, and I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt here. Since I have Aston Martin as number 4 of the driver standings, I think that he's on for a good season this year with Aston Martin. It's due coming. I think he will be able to learn a lot from Fernando, and I'm really looking positively at the pace that he showed during testing. And it seems that Aston Martin has figured out that that straight line speed that was really, really hurting them last season. So hopefully we'll see a good season for Aston Martin and Lance Stroll. And then I just think Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo 9th, 10th, they're the top performers of their team, the number 1 drivers for RB and McLaren respectively. And having RB and McLaren 5th and 6th, I think that they end up 9th and 10th on the drivers championship.
Yeah, so the only one I'm taken back by is I think is Lance Stroll. I put
that's fair.
Yeah, I like so mine's similar, but I guess based on my constructors, mine's a little bit different. So I have Max at number 1, Lewis at number 2, 3 Checo, 4 Charles, 5 I have Russell. This I actually have Oscar. I have Oscar doing better than Lando. And then I have 7 for Sainz. It's pretty much same reason as yours. I'm pretty sure Ferrari is going to kind of leave him with no strat, and he's going to be left out there on his own to do a lot of the work. Number 8, I have Lando, because I still think McLaren's going to have a good season. I have them as number 4 in my constructors. So I think, they're not going to be, winning top 3 every race, but I think they're still going to be up there together in the points to get a decent year out of it. And that's why I think that's why I have them listed as number 4 in constructors as well. And then at number 9, I have Danny Rick, because same reasons. I think RB looks really good. And I think Danny Rick, when he took over halfway through the season, the races that he did do, he looked really good, and he looked like he was settling into the car towards the end of the season. And then I have Alonso as number 10, because I have Aston Martin listed at number 5 at my constructors. But I feel like Alonso's season is going to be kind of similar to last year's, where he'll have a good start to the season and like a good beginning middle season, And then I think he'll kind of fall off before we get into the midway point of the season, kind of like he did last year, and just not be up there in the top 5 and top 6 that we usually saw him at. Or maybe more towards the end of the season when Aston Martin has the car figured out. But I that's kind of what I have. Similar to yours, but I think the only difference is I don't have Lance Stroll as high up. I have Alonso instead, a little bit lower.
It's fair.
That's an interesting one. And maybe we even go as far as to say we can bookmark this point in the podcast to say, Tyler, if your prediction comes true, if Lance Stroll does indeed finish ahead of Fernando Alonso in this year's Drivers' Championship, then you get a Lance Stroll hat on me delivered right to your door. That's
I
how
love it.
confident I am. Fernando Alonso will beat Lance Stroll again this season. So
Love it. I love it.
let's make a bet. Let's put this at stake.
Okay. Perfect. Hats on the line.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll come back to the moment then in about 11 months' time for the review podcast. So yeah, no, it's interesting. It's I think we're all in agreement about the Red Bull being favorites this season. That's obvious, as you said, Tyler. I think you're being silly if you look at it any other way, especially with Max there at the front. Like I said before, as to how much domination we're going to get, I really don't know, because I'd like to think it's going to be closer than last year. I'd like to think that maybe 2 or 3 teams will be able to win another race, but honestly, because I was thinking to myself that before the launches began and before testing, obviously, I thought to myself, okay, like when we get on the podcast, what's one thing that we could tell viewers out there that's going to make them feel optimistic and positive about the season? I thought, well, the good news for everybody is that at least we're not going to get the same type of domination we did last year, because they won, 21 out of 22 races. So, the chances of that ever happening again are almost none. And then they came out with that whole new concept with the RB20, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe they're going for a perfect season this year. Maybe that's what all the improvements are about, is to make a car that's going to do the first perfect season in F1 history. So we'll see what happens. But I think that below them, the battle for P2 in the constructors, P3, P4, P5 is honestly a toss-up. Like, I can't really even disagree with the list that you guys put there, because it could happen. We could see Aston Martin finish second, possibly. We could see McLaren finish second. There's all the chances that even a Mercedes might finish in fifth, or it could be a Ferrari. Like, I think it really is that close that this season we might not even see truly the second best team finish P2. It might be, the third fastest car finishes in second because of better team execution, strategies, etc., things like that. So at the very least, I think that battle in the midfield will be extremely exciting, because I think from Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, Aston Martin, it's incredibly close. And honestly, some people are even throwing RB in that fold, being kind of challenging those teams, which would be really surprising.
It really would be, but I mean, they do have that influence from Red Bull as well, to be able to have some of the, I guess, data that the Red Bull gets as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see how, with that open seat next season, you would think, once it's not, I don't think it's confirmed, but I mean, if Perez is going to be his last season with Red Bull potentially, where's that open seat going to go? Is it going to go to Ricardo? Are they going to try and nurture Ricardo? And are we going to see a mid-season driver change like what we saw last season as well? I think that's maybe an extra little debate there as well, if anyone will change seats mid-season in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen it too often other than Red Bull really pulling it off. And I think drivers like Yuki and Checo definitely have a little bit more to lose this year than all the other drivers on the grid. Just, I mean, maybe Yuki is less, because I don't think there's much. There's a driver waiting as much as last year compared to where they had Danny Ricciardo sitting in the sub seat. But yeah, I think Checo, especially with the Red Bull seat being open and they haven't confirmed anything, and I think if we don't have confirmation for him by like June or July of this year, I think we can probably say that he might not be there next year. But who knows where his performance ends up being at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think driver performance and also the driver market this season will be probably the biggest storyline to watch, other than what we see out on track, because a lot of drivers are out of contract at the end of this season. And as we mentioned at the top of the podcast, the driver market already blew up with Hamilton's move to Ferrari. And I also think that it would be smart of some of these teams to lock in these drivers as soon as possible because of just how hot the driver market will become. So, a driver like Carlos Sainz, he'll probably, a team will assign him as quick as possible to maybe get him away from Mercedes or from Sauber or going to Audi. So who knows what's going to happen? That's going to be interesting to follow. But coming up on about an hour here of this podcast, so let's start wrapping it up soon, and we'll go around the table here and go final thoughts of just what are you expecting from this season? I mean, we kind of already touched on it a little bit, but other than maybe Verstappen and Red Bull winning the championship, what are you looking out for in this season? Record season ahead of 24 races, so plenty of things that to keep an eye out for this season. Tyler, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm really interested. Like you said, 24 races this season, a record. I'm really interested to see what the reliability of these cars are going to be. Supposedly, it's supposed to be a lot better. We saw some positive during preseason testing. But I just wonder with so many races if we're going to see a little bit of fatigue take place, not only on the drivers and the crew, but the cars as well. I mean, um, only so many components to go around, and I'm not sure what the cost cap what exactly if it's gone up at all for this season. But we didn't reset implemented too much last season. But more races could equal more crashes, could equal a closer ceiling toward that cap cost as well. So that's a storyline for me that'll be really interesting, along with that drivers market, to see where certain drivers are going to end up near the end of this season, and who's going to take that leap and try to stop Max Verstappen. Someone has to, or is Max Verstappen just going to dominate like he did last season? I mean, you need someone to step up, you would think, hopefully, to make this a championship, and hopefully someone can to make things interesting here for all the F1 fans. I think F1 really needs a non-Verstappen dominated season to try and get back some of the momentum that they had going into last season and the seasons they've had before. And I think it's good for the sport if there is some good on-track battles that will take place and not just have a runaway season for the longevity of the sport.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Tyler, I'm really interested to know what happens with those 24 races, because more races also means there's probably going to be maybe one or two more sprint races as well, because then you don't know how those engines are going to be affected. So you never know, and more sprint races also means more crashes as well. So it could be a defining season for F1 if they decide to continue with 24 races. I mean, I would love to see them still maybe have that many and not have as many in America. It could be just spread out a little bit more, because it seems like they're just catering towards the American market a little bit more with Drive to Survive doing so well out there. I think what I'm excited to see the most is probably how Williams stacks this year. I know last year with them, with the huge rebrand, James taking over as the oh my god, what was his official role?
Team principal.
It was kind of like a new year for them and trying to figure out things out. And Alex Albon started to look a little bit more comfortable and a little bit better towards the end of the season. So I'm interested to see how Williams does this year. I mean, last year was a new year for them, so this year could definitely, be a defining year for them going into the 2025 regulations as well. So.
Yeah, and I echo the same thoughts there. Just to kind of piggyback on the comments about the long season that we have ahead of us. And of course, if we don't have a close championship like in last season, how is that going to affect Formula One? Not so much in viewership, but also just the fan base as well, right? Because we're seeing obviously the huge influx of Drive to Survive fans, but every single one of those Drive to Survive fans are here for the sport itself, meaning the actual racing, the practices, the qualifyings, the races itself. They're here more for what the show of Formula One is and the drama that comes behind it and the personalities and all that type of stuff. So if the on-track action isn't delivering, how many of those new fans will F1 be able to recover? Because we're fans of the sport for many years. Shaker, you've been a fan for the last 7, 8 years or so. You and I, Tyler, have been watching ever since we've been small, so about 20 years now, a little bit more. We're always going to watch, no matter how boring it is or how uncompetitive it is. Most of the time, always going to watch. But not everybody is like that. So how will F1 deal with that with this whole marketing and, like you said, Shaker, the U.S. market move and trying to make as much money as possible? How will they deal with that if we get another year of a blowout championship, especially in an age where only in 2026 we're going to get a big regulation change again? So that will be something to follow. I'm also interested to see which driver. First of all, are we going to be able to have another team race this season? And if they do, who will be the first driver to win their first F1 race? So I'm thinking, will a Lando Norris be able to break through and finally win his first race? Will Oscar Piastri possibly be able to win his first F1 race? Or will, Fernando Alonso be finally able to get his 33rd career race victory? So I'm looking to see if anybody will be able to break that Red Bull spell and kind of give us a surprise victory. And just finally for me as well, I'm really paying attention this year to Max Verstappen too, because I think with this RB20, we might see kind of the final form of Max Verstappen and his greatness. Because as good as this car is and as good as he is performing, I think that we're really going to see maybe another level of his greatness and his domination this season, which as much as it is boring to see, I think it'll also be a pleasure to watch as well. Because to go from the Lewis Hamilton era, that greatness, and then go straight into the Max Verstappen era, has been pretty incredible to watch. So we got a lot of interesting things to come, I think, 2024. I hope and pray for competitive races and drama on track, and also some surprises as well this year. So I'm excited for it. I know you guys are as well. 24 races this season. We can't obviously promise that we're going to do a recap podcast for every single race, but we will try to be here with you guys as much as possible through the 2024 season, whether it's three of us or just the two of us in a tandem. We'll see what we can do, and of course with schedules. So we really hope that you guys will join us here on the Backmarkers F1 Show channel. So that's about it for me and my list of the topics we want to cover today. I'll leave the final word to you guys before we say goodbye.
Yeah, Chris, echo your statements there. It's great to be back with you guys, and hopefully we'll be able to cover as much as we can. Like we said, like Chris said, whether it's the three of us or two of us, we'll try to get some podcasts out there no matter what. But it's going to be a fantastic season, I think. Again, maybe if you ignore the Max Verstappen dominance and focus on P2 down, it will be really, really interesting to see who comes out on top. And like I said, will someone try to break that Max Verstappen dominance, or at least get a surprise victory in there, and maybe we won't see a 20. Maybe we'll see Max go 24 for 24. Who knows? That would be a crazy milestone as well. I mean, that'd be something to remember. But it's going to be interesting for the season on and off the track. I'm hoping that the on track it kind of outshines the off track news that might happen this season. That's kind of, which is, I don't know, maybe a sad thing that I'm hoping for, but I'm I'm hoping that we see some good on track battles this season, and keep that momentum that F1 has been seeing going in towards the 2025 season. And I hope all the fans get to enjoy a few very, very interesting races this season as well. Shaker?
Yeah, I like you guys said, I'm really looking forward to maybe having another team win this year rather than Red Bull, but it's also at the same time, it would be fascinating to see Max win 24 races in a row. Because I mean, despite last year being boring and him winning a lot, those drives are quite fantastic to watch on its own, and to watch them do it. Because I think at this point, if he wins, I think more than half the races, he becomes the most like winningest driver in the last like 5 years. So he's still got a lot of stats to break, and I feel like he's still chasing them. So it'll be interesting to see, and I'm looking forward to talking about it with you guys and hear your thoughts about it at the end of those races. So
Absolutely, and we're only a couple days away now from the official action of the 2024 season, starting in Bahrain. Programming note, just if you guys aren't aware, the first race of the year is actually on a Saturday due to Ramadan, so it's actually going to be at that for this race in Bahrain and also for next weekend in Saudi Arabia. So we got the Bahrain Grand Prix previews up on the channel if you got to check that out. And of course, the rest of our videos will also be there as well, along with our podcast. Wherever you are listening to audio only, whether Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast. We do have the video version available as well up on YouTube. Just if you want to see our pretty faces, then you can head over there. Or if you just want to see any of the visuals that we talk about, we include some visuals as well for you guys, so it's not just a couple of talk heads. So subscribe to us there on YouTube. Make sure you enable all notifications so you get the latest videos sent straight to your mobile devices. And also podcast players like Spotify and iTunes. Subscribe to us there so you never miss a video. We are on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. All links can be found in the description below. And follow us there. Everything Backmarks F1 Show in 2024. So for Tyler McDonald, for Sheriff Barty, it's been a pleasure to be back with you guys here on this episode 138 of podcast. And we'll be with you again soon. Enjoy the race, guys, and we will see you afterwards for our recap podcast of the Bahrain Grand Prix. Bye for now. Take care, everybody.